But I'm excited about some of the other things that came down here this week. The General Accounting Office putting out a report that basically outlines the entire history. I mean, the government took 39 pages to say that data interoperability is a good thing.
Only
But at
39?
the end of the day, every federal agent, everybody that's out there that wants to have something substantive to say, it's not my fault, we did this, right? That report gives them the foundation to say, yeah, I'm going to plug in because, you know, there it is. And the roadmap forward is exactly as we're forecasting it should be, that we should be using, you know, and implementing open data standards and really enabling, multiple legacy systems to communicate. So that was kind of exciting. But I think the most exciting is when NASA updated its website and came out with, oh, by the way, here's the moon base that we're going to need to build. And it has a whole section on data standards and how they can't build it without data standards. And what they missed was the financial data standard. They have all the very highly complicated engineering technical standards, but not the low-hanging fruit. But they also have a little box that says, what are we missing? Please help us build the moon base, which gives us obviously an opportunity to say, hey, here's the GIOA report, just like it's the same opportunity to go to the DOT and say, look at this collaboration group that we're putting together is not trying to create something new or the new solution or having you change what you're doing. What we're saying is we've been following the legislation, we've been following the working groups and the committee work and whatnot, and this is consistent with the trajectory that has been really developed through consensus, and that we should stop being fragmented and all over the place on the financial reporting side. We got a lot of work on the engineering data set. That's extremely complicated. And man, I can't believe what you guys do, tackling that hard part. But the low hanging fruit should be something that we can now demonstrate is not only achievable, but has already been mapped out by the government as something that is the roadmap. And so, I'm happy to be the collaborator and the cat herder for the business case. But what I'm really excited about is when we launched this deal, and you saw the press release. It's really about the DT Rich Center there at GMU and the leadership role that Phil, you've expressed you wanted to do as an academic, but also as a member of the NSF family. Your partnership with Harvard and Virginia Tech, obviously Virginia Tech for our relationship with Senator Warner, brings a powerful message to our team.
Yeah,
And in
definitely.
responding to, I don't know if you saw, we still haven't heard back from Jay Klein as to whether or not the working group can be formally under his group. But I shared with him that we've got to keep going, and that while he said it's going to take time, he had me meet with McCarthy and all the rest. I said, we've got June 30th, which is a great opportunity, particularly with the moon base, to energize people and talk about what we're doing about something that's a little more fun than just the data part. Data people, eyes glaze over. The moon base is really something exciting because it really ties people to something that's really going on right now that a lot of people are not familiar with, but also that we are future-proofing our work. And it's not just about a silo, but actually, the GOE report really helps define it as a bigger mission. So when we launch it, I wanted them to launch it, as part of the DT Rich Center for two reasons. One, our startup contract deal. And at the end of the day, we want to bring closure to that. And so we already know the answer to that the DOTs would be better served with giving the constituency actual data instead of a PDF to be interpreted. And I've asked Senator Warner, as you may all know, that it'd be great if he could find us $1 million, 1,250,000 to be exact, so that the DOTs did not have to apply for an ADCMS grant and explain what they're doing and give a scope and a budget. But they could just apply for a $25,000 predetermined budget item for them to hire an IT guy to map their legacy system to the XBRL standard. if we can find federal funding for that, I think a lot of the resistance would go away. And, you know, the funding is there under the ADCMS grant. And I think we have a shot at maybe having some of this year's $20 million isolated. But we need a DOT to take the lead. And I know, man, we've been looking for you. You've got a great relationship with all the DOTs, particularly Caltrans and the, is it BIM for I initiative? If one of them said, hey, look, let's just put in one grant for 1.250 for all of us, or we do it as part of HEAP, or we do it as any other one of the various DOT groups, or we ignore the grant process altogether. I think part of what I want to do with our working group is what's the best way to get the DOTs on. Because if we get the DOTs on, all the rest of the dominoes fall, right? Because 50 DOTs giving out real data would be followed by GSA and all the other federal agencies because it provides compliance as required, and all the state and local agencies likewise have to comply with the same thing. And so we're actually meeting with the mayor of Petaluma, a little local town here, next week, because if these students, which we've had in Carson, you're one of them, you know, does the model for how to help a public agency like a DOT map their legacy system. Well, how many other counties and cities and local departments would likewise have that same benefit? There's 88,000 of them. So Al Berkeley's offered to match his Johns Hopkins to some of our local students to work with the local counties. Because in California, there's actually legislation that every county has to publish its progress payments on the web. Nobody does because there's no enforcement and there's no roadmap. So we've been working with Sustainable Schools of Marin and whatnot that are very interested in finding ways to have the students engaged in projects. And so having the students help the local counties and whatnot with their local agencies convert to the application for payment is something we're starting. Because it changes the narrative from the boring to being relative to people's lives. And right now, everybody's really curious about what students are going to do and how they learn in this new AI environment. And so we've gotten very positive responses to little projects with local counties to see if they can't plug in. And so our working group is a national working group and work with some local county in the city of Petaluma Public Works Department so that they can too demonstrate how to do it with students doing the work, high school students. And if high school students could do the work for a local county and whatnot as a model, then our working group's website will be able to demonstrate to 98,000 different counties how their local schools can create local AI programs and little projects and continue the momentum. So I drafted a press release, and if you're like me, you don't like to have a blank screen and say, well, tell me what you want to write. Instead, I'll write down, and I gave everybody some quotes. And obviously it's in Word. We'd like to put out a press release that does reflect quotes that people would want to have, not the ones that I've given you. And basically announce that we're having the event on June 30th at GMU and invite people to come. Now, I don't expect a lot on short notice, but Phil, you had mentioned you could probably handle the size that would come. We've invited Senator
we have no problem with
and we
handling
heard
that.
from
It's,
Senator
it's in
Kelly's
the
office
summer.
this morning that they are considering it.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
Senator Kelly comes, that would be great. And he'll obviously bring more people. And they've asked if there'll be press there.
Yeah.
And Phil, you saw my response. I'll share it with the group a little later, but I'm sure GMU has a policy for press and when, you know, high profile people are on campus.
We do, yeah.
So I told Senator Kelly's office, you know, that's up to GMU. We're working on topic. And then we've asked Senator Kelly and Senator Warner if they won't be willing to give the topic of how does the GAO report provide the foundation, the moon base, the mission, and what our working group is doing, the data interoperability, enable it. You know, Senator Warner is going to need no learning curve. Right. Not only does he very well versed in space, he's also on the Transportation Commission. right? He was one of the people that drafted the IHJA, which has the ADCMS grant in it. So, again, we're singing to the choir. And I think that he's going to recognize that this is an extension of what he supports. And if he cannot attend in person, we've offered and asked if he wouldn't be willing to do a video that would allow us to share his support and his comments. And I can request the same of Senator Warner. And frankly, the matter is, as we talk about strategy and we talk about, launching, if our website had lots of little 3 and 4 minute clips for people that people trusted, Senator Warner, Senator Kelly, Secretary of Treasury, Bestnet on modernizing the T list, getting 3-minute videos, but we could particularly filter through our LinkedIn connections, could really generate awareness, and people will think there's something here, which there is, and start to engage in the review and comment process because we've got a very narrowly defined objective. The review and comment period allows us just to look at the application for payment by itself, and does anybody have any data elements they need added? You don't have to destroy, it's not about what comes out or validating what's in there, just finding out what could be added. And I think the 50 DOTs engagement, we've got the data elements we want. And if we could get a response from the 50 DOTs, they would look at each other. And the group that we would convene for this is HEAPS. I don't know if you're familiar with HEAPS. Man, you probably are. That's the Highway Engineer Exchange Program. And we met there last year. We were on their panel last year. And so I think we have the ability when we do a press release to send it out to each of the HEAP members and invite HEAP to join our collaboration. I suspect they will. And so I shared with you the invitation list that I drew up for May 5th some time ago. And you can look at, there's 100 and some odd names and trade associations. We know from that list who our baseline is, but each one of those know others, and each one of our members of our collaboration group no doubt know others. So my guess is we can have a pretty good invitation to June 30th that would capture people's attention with the moon base, recognize the validity of what we're talking about with the GOA report, and show up to find out the question and answers that they may have about participating, so that by the end of June 30th, we'll have collected a couple of video recordings from key people, the question of answers. And my guess is people will start to sign up for the review and comment period. Phil, you and I talked about, where is that hosted? Right now I have it on GoDaddy, and I get a notice and I can put it on a spreadsheet. Obviously not the most effective. That list of names, I think, is going to be the long-term asset of this project, because that list will comprise the people engaged in digital twins, engaged in this deal. And so I really think it should be something that the DT Rich Center holds as its asset, and we work under your umbrella. Because, obviously EDM is not the same as a public agency. In this database, we want people to want to engage because they have it, they're trusting. So that's my invitation to join list. And then Jorge and Carson and I have been talking about having somebody give a same talk. Again, we could host it at a party at Texas A&M, which is obviously right next to Johnson Space Center. University of Miami, Phil, I think I mentioned to you, and Carson Steve was very interested in, he says, look, we got lots of astronauts around Miami.
Yep.
So we can literally have 3 campuses where each one of them brings a subject matter expert in their neighborhood, and maybe even, and we've got links with the asteroids group to all the astronaut group. Let's see if we get an astronaut to come talk about the moon base to kind of get people interested in what we're doing.
Yeah, so Dixon, if June 30th is a 3 sites activity, and also potentially engage Senator Kenney and Senator Waller, I would suggest that a virtual or hybrid mode to do that. So we can have the high profile people talking, and also have the experts. At GMU said we have a space center, which is just kind of chartered by our UNOCET leadership, and we're going to have, in fact, a kickoff of the center on June 30th. So the matches quite well.
Wow.
And in that center, one of the research direction is to build the Moon base or Moonverse, the Lulaverse project. So that fits really well over there on June 30th. And coming back to the bigger picture about Dixon, you mentioned about the higher level engagement with the Department of the Secretary of the Treasury and also Senator Warner and Kelly. I think you are the catalyzer and also the leader on that. We need that kind of momentum ongoing. On the other side, we also need a working group to move forward on two sides. One is to define or develop the standards. That's where DTC, EDM, and DTLH, and also SBI could really work together. And a lot of parties on development put together the concrete components. That's where Texas A&M and University of Miami, we could all work together. So there's several fronts we need to push at the same time.
Like this.
Yeah, over to you, Dixon.
Okay, I just realized why my sound, everything is so muffled. My speakers got unplugged. So my apologies if I'm a little slow here in hearing. But everybody else heard what you were saying, and I got most of it. David, can I talk to you? One of the main leads here is the financial data standards, and you'll see the next thing is, and one of the things Jay was looking for was technical capability. Obviously, your work with ISO is huge,
Right.
and Phil's work, and obviously having a path to ISO recognition is very, very critical to stakeholder buy-in. So you've seen in my agenda here, I've listed a bunch of them. So Jay's group is obviously the top one. It's BIM. I've asked Jay if he wants us to be a joint working group. Does he want us to be a liaison to his group? How does he want to have us part of NIBS? Now, you might remember on our introduction call, he said NIBS is better as a ghost in the background. And it was funny. He kind of said, well, no, I'm not a ghost. He goes, well, no. So I was able to show him the video like we're doing today. But we're waiting to see what NIBS wants to do. I'm expecting them to get very engaged because we are doing what he wants us to do. He's looking for people to get things done, not look for direction. And so, David, that ISO relationship, unless I'm wrong, and Min, maybe you guys likewise, you set up the original, Building Smart set up the original BIM deal at ISO. Now, that was Jeffrey Oled, I know. That was not, Calvin, but obviously you guys are deeply entrenched in ISO and the digital twin. How do you see us working with ISO? Do you see us as our working group applying to be a liaison organization to the various ISO groups so that we have connected to them and awareness with them? Or I'll leave that really to you and Dave. I really don't know anything about working with ISO, but I'll turn that over to you.
I mean, there are multiple ways of working with ISO. One of those is by chartering directly as an ISO subcommittee. There are mechanisms for that. I don't remember them in any detail right now, but it happens all of the time. The way an alternative is through the OMG process, or now part of EDMA, where as part of a task force, a domain task force, we'd probably set one up for construction, or it could be done through the finance domain task force, similarly, to be able to run it through that process. Now, the challenge with that, and then our relationship, we have a special relationship with ISO. Standards that we create go through something that's called fast track. So for the time it would take to develop the process at OMG, it takes about an additional less than a year, for review and all, but less than a year to have that standard become a proper standard with an ISO number as well. So it continues to be an EDM or an OMG standard, but it gains not just the endorsement, but the full approval of ISO, and it becomes an ISO standard equally. So there are benefits of that. A complication is that at various points of the process, it might only members are the only ones who can actually vote on this, although there are many provisions for non-members to be able to contribute ideas and such through the process. So as long as you asked, I thought I'd lay that out. We can go into much more detail at another time, and I can also bring in Mike Bennett, who's the technical director of OMG, who owns the governance process and would be able to talk more precisely about the steps in the timetable.
Yeah. And so you working with Min and the building smart group is a natural. And so, that's really nothing I can help with. And so I'll look for you guys to really take the lead on that.
Right. So we should, Min, we should probably have a conversation. So we've never actually had a chat. We should talk about how this might work out best, and what our options and alternatives are.
Sure. The main ISO that SBI is, closely related to is, of course, it's about something that's related to building smart and open standard, which is, IFC. So IFC ISO documents get generated from building smart. So that's more closer. That's a closer connection that we have, but we can talk more. Yeah.
Yeah, just to agree on what the optimal process is. I'm not saying that the OMG process is the right one for it, but just to kind of get to it, that seems like one of the earlier decisions that can be made. Based on time, based on all these other opportunities, or what the collaboration points or what the preferred path ought to be. Let's work that out.
So David and Ming, I remember that for ISO, the US should have a national committee for specific subject, like for transportation or for building or for financial. Are you already working with that committee, the US representative to ISO on the subject?
Right, that's a good question, right? So, and these committees, or technical committees, TCs, as you know, really to different domains, different sectors or concepts. I've been involved at many points, and OMG is deeply involved with TC 68, which is the financial sector, which is obviously one part of this. I don't think we've had engagement with the I forget what the number is of the one that would pertain to construction, but that's an alternative as well.
We can find out. Yeah,
right. I think it's in one of the materials that Dixon had sent over, and I just don't remember what it is right now. But we can determine the best path. Right? Is this a financial thing? Is this a construction thing? There can be collaboration between both, but I think you pretty much want to select a particular path. T50, I thought that might be, yes.
Yeah,
59. And then there are the subdomains or the subcommittees within that. Thank you, Carson. So, those are just some early decisions that we probably should make to simplify our tasks and ensure that that someone on the other end is expecting this to come through as well. I'll check internally. I'll check with my team on whether we do have any involvement with 59 to date, but we do have very broad engagement with ISO at the top level, and with a number of the subcommittees, not just finance, but relating to robotics, weights and measures, and probably about 15 or 20 other areas.
Yeah, I engaged with TC211, which is a geospatial information site, and also working with Laura on a digital twin standard, trying to push it through ISO on earth science. So this experience, we would love to contribute if we can move forward on this.
Great, yes.
Yeah. So I am going to apologize. I figured out what's happened. My speakers got unhooked, so all I'm hearing is my subwoofer. So I'm in a little bit of trouble here, but
We
it's
can
all
hear
right.
you now. You're
So
good.
Try to talk like this.
Yeah, everybody talk lower.
But I'll follow up with, and I did with Jay this morning. I'll do a group deal to Jay to ask him for his engagement on how to communicate with ISO too.
Yeah.
Because he's very excited, I believe, about doing something with us. He's just trying to figure out how.
Jay should probably be the one recommending the path. I think his proximity to I guess 59 is probably very, very close. So I mean,
Well, he's chairman.
right. So doesn't get any closer than that. So
Oh, yeah.
I mean that's the ideal way. Again, OMG could be a mechanism for working with that if we need that. But let's get his
And don't
advice.
forget that he wanted me on the committee.
Right.
Right. He was that interested in having our group, be represented there. And, rightfully so. He said, oh, by the way, no, sorry, you can't be on the committee. Right. You don't have expertise, which is true. So he asked for you. And I appreciate, like anything, he's got a lot on his plate and he's got a very complicated assignment at NIBS, particularly as being the chairman of the BIMS ISO tag. So I'm not offended that he's not immediately responding to me, but I've been asking him a couple of times. I can't invite anybody to June 30th as a NIBS, sponsored working group if I'm not a NIBS sponsored working group.
Right.
And he understands, as I've shared with him, that my credentials, as a Buck Rogers out here in the Bay Area doesn't help. We need to have the ability for stakeholders to know it's not the Buck Rogers show. And he's bought into that.
Right. Well, that comes back to the question I was raising. We need a firm process in place so that we can communicate that to the constituents for what we're trying to do here, and we can build timelines and manage the expectations of those who will be reviewing this down the path. Because I mean, and Phil, you know this more than anyone, the path of working through ISO, it's a very, very complex and bureaucratic path.
Yes.
It could be an enormous time suck, and if you don't know exactly how you're going to head down the path, it becomes an enormous time suck at a galactic scale as opposed to just a local scale.
Yeah, but I think if we focus on just the application for payment data set and not be careful of too much scope creep, right?
Definitely no scope creep.
Yeah, and that was Jay's recommendation. And he was saying, look, for ISO, don't bring up the moon base and don't bring up all this stuff.
No.
Yeah,
keep
that's
it
a
very simple.
future in the moon base. Yeah, it's not today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
which I have no trouble in keeping in the lane that works. But obviously, we're not going to stop doing everything else.
No.
So
But strictly
it should be on the
speaking,
screen now, our agenda. Sorry, I meant to put that up earlier.
yeah, there we go. Right, strictly speaking, a proper standard should work anywhere, right? So we don't need to worry about lunar regolith or anything like that. So it should be fine.
Yeah, I think Jay is probably going to ask us to be a liaison to his group, and then that will give us the pathway to ISO under Jay's guidance. And if he wants to be a joint, or if he wants us, whatever he wants, we're all on the same team, and so I'm sure that we'll come up with something that works for everybody. So, touching base. We've been talking about working with other agencies, right? And so I think, we've invited Senator Warner and Kelly, and Senator Kelly's office responded this morning asking, how many people will be there? Will the press be there? When they asked us, the press is going to be there, I knew we got them.
Yeah, we
So,
we could have the press here. If he confirmed, we can get probably the big ones like CNN or Atlantic. Yeah.
As you know, I've worked with the SBA already. The SBA is already mapped to XBRL, and they can write surety bonds right now. And obviously, what we're trying to do is push the JOA report where they said federal agencies should be working on the same dictionary. So obviously, with the DOT, with the ADCMS, with the DOE orange button, FERC is using XBRL reporting, SEC obviously is already using XBR reporting. We've been working with NIST. They're on some of our working groups. They have a whole benchmark report. I think you're all familiar with that one. Treasury, I have asked Senator Warner to engage there, and I'm hoping that we can do that, because when we talk about data interoperability, when people see it actually implemented, the LEI is a huge deal, and modernizing the T-list with the LEI should not be a big issue. Adding the bond number, the URL to validate a bond, likewise, is not a technology issue, and I don't think it'll be a consensus issue either, because just about everybody's looking to get rid of the paper, and that would do it. So if we get Treasury to join us, that would be a huge deal. So if anybody has any contact with Treasury, we're working with Mike Willis and also Robert Peterson. David, you might know Robert. He was part of the LEI group over at Treasury. He has now resigned, and he is now a private citizen. And he said this is one of his projects that he'd really like to be engaged with as a retired guy. And Mike Willis is retired as well. And so,
right. There's one guy I might add who is current there. So he was my counsel back at SEC, and then he was the main counsel at OFR, involved in the LEI program. He's also on the board of the GLEAF for a couple terms. He's now the chief counsel, chief lawyer at the FDIC, and he Matt Reed is his name, REED.
okay.
And I know he would welcome a contact here, and because surety might have an impact on financial institutions, it might even be actually relevant to his current job.
Well, it does. And your counterpart over in in our XBRL digital asset working group, working on
Right.
Genesis and the Clarity, have submitted responses to FDIC, in which I didn't add much because I'm not technically proficient enough to, with the group that was involved, including your associate, Jason.
Right.
Jason did a great job of articulating, and Peter Worms as well. So the FDIC has received from our working group, what a surprise that they should have data interoperability using open standards. So again, we are finding ourselves at this inflection point when people have been working on solutions, and the solutions are now being identified and being basically, here's an answer. The GOA report is clearly one. The Genesis and Clarity Acts are producing answers, not just questions. And we've been able to be part of that. And I won't say I've influenced it, but Jason certainly has, and Peter Worms has, and XBRL has, because they've added the technical capability to respond to the questions. So, I think that the NASA connection with their data standard request is a natural with Mark Kelly to say, come on, this group should be here too. They're a federal agency. They're hiring contractors to build things. It may not be a data standard that you thought about, but it might as well be incorporated because it's relevant. And then the GOA, I have not reached out to them, but they have a whole deal saying, reach out to us if you got questions or whatnot. And I wanted our responses to, help build the moon base and all the rest to be a group effort instead of mine. I have no problem, as you could imagine, sending out emails and advocating for the case. But I think that we have an opportunity for all of those agencies to come back with a much more professionally cohesive, collective response instead of me, shooting off a bunch of emails. So industry events is something we could talk about. I've already given you all I'm not going to read this. This was the outline I thought for the June 30th. Again, I have no problem, pushing an envelope forward. If anybody wants to do something different or whatnot, this is not a one-man show. If you don't think the game plan or whatnot, or the theory, or you'd like to contribute or add or comment, highly encourage it and welcome it. So I thought, again, these are 15-minute talks. Each one of these people can spend 2 hours if given 2 hours. But the group that we're looking for is really a LinkedIn audience who's going to watch the recording. And they're not going to watch a long recording. So we're kind of looking for sound bites that will collectively put together to get people to sign up to do the application for payment review and comment. The rest of it is out there. Some of the events coming up, CFMA, that's the Construction Financial Management Association. They're meeting next week, so it's too late to attend and whatnot. But Neil Shaw, the president, was very interested in it. And their membership would be the contractors that specialize in the construction on the financial aspect. These are the CFOs. So the application for payment is dead center with this group. So we get invited to June 30th, Monday, or today, I should say, and it will be a convention topic next week. I've already spoken to the convention last year. We already know they're interested, and their membership is about 10,000. And those 10,000 could say, is there anything in that application for payment that I need? And if we get CFMA membership participation, we are really going to be able to demonstrate a consensus across multiple market segments. After that, and Phil, I can let you touch base on what's happening on August 7th and 8th at GMU.
Yeah,
After that is, you might remember, we got bumped from the innovation group from Jay back to the September BIM forum, which provides us another opportunity to outreach. And then lastly, is that IHEAP conference, that's all the DOTs. And they're asking for presentations, and we could give one. That's where the DOT, we could say this is why the DOT should shift. I should add, I was a panelist last year, and we already gave the topic on digitizing and data standards. So this would be a follow-up. And so that's that. And then the other thing I want to share was the relevant initiatives. As I mentioned, one of the people we're talking to is AI workforce and local schools. And if we can get the process for how a public agency can convert, their legacy system to plug and play with an application for payment, it's just as relevant to the city of Petaluma's Public Works Department for their local school or their local library project. And there, we've been talking with the Marin Group about creating an AI opportunity for students to work with the local counties and follow the model that our group set up. When we do it for the DOTs, after 50 of them, it's going to be kind of, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. And at the end of the day, each of these public agencies, they all want to be there. And working with students could be a great educational opportunity and create a workforce. And I've asked sponsors. Al Berkeley has offered to sponsor the first 5,000. So we're going to have 5 schools and just do a little project and be part of a communal effort to try to talk about data interoperability infrastructure as holistic. So the other one, as you probably know, we've been doing surety-backed solar loans as the whole mechanism. The solar business has got upside down, obviously, with the ITC credit and other issues and administration not being very supportive. But the other thing is, if I could approve a solar loan for $50,000 to put a solar project on the roof, why can't I give $50,000 to buy a autonomous battery? I always joke that the definition of a Tesla is a battery that comes with a car. So what we envision here is really a battery that comes with 4 seats that can operate in a 3-mile radius of any train station to enable to solve the last mile. And there, I could use the exact same methodology, the same thing with the utility department, because as a battery that connects to the home, it qualifies for the 42% tax credit. We have to validate all of this, but if it did, then buyers could buy their own automated car. California has just modified its DMV regulations. They now have a classification called a neighborhood autonomous car, electric vehicle, that if it doesn't go more than 35 miles an hour, can operate on city streets. So you're probably familiar, the Waymo is almost $200,000 Jaguar, and the Zoot is about $100,000. We think we can get a glorified golf cart down to around $40,000 to $50,000. Now I say that because I went into Quad and all the rest, and it'll give you a feasibility report, and it named manufacturers. It said the LiDAR. It's absolutely possible. So we're looking to some of the people who want to do solar loans, make a loan on a car. You get the 40% tax credit because it plugs into the home. It could be under the on-bill program, which means utility collects the premium. It collects the loan payment. The counties get a fleet of cars they don't have to pay for. And the citizenry not only gets a last mile, but what we're really focusing on is we have some homeless shelters and whatnot that help with career goals and try to get people back in the workforce. If you get a job you can't get to, what good is it? So we're working with Uber and Lyft where they can actually register as a customer of the Homeward Bound is the place. And they can have free shuttle back and forth to their jobs. Okay. That could be a model that could apply all across the country because people's mobility has been a real challenge. And what we want to try to talk to Petaluma about is infrastructure as a whole. Transportation is more than just a road, just as a school is more than just a place for students, right? It's community centers. We've got to look at things holistically. And so Petaluma has heard me out and said, let's meet. And so I'm going to tell them, look, let's put out an RFP. Let's see if there's manufacturers out there who will respond. I've got lenders who will loan. I've got surety products who will do it. It's the solar model we've already built. And more importantly, it's with the schools as well, right? And you tie in the 98, the county doing an application for payment, because the application for payment on a city school project, it's the same as an application for payment as somebody paying for their car loan and their utility bill. It's a payment. Payments is the source of all economic activity. And so what we're trying to demonstrate is how the application for payment enables the payment and transaction to help with solving the last mile, to help with counties get plug and play for helping small businesses participate. We can touch all sorts of things. But in our working group, we got to keep it focused. I think Jay is right. And I think everybody on this call agrees. The more we get exponential, the more people get lost. But I'm going to be working on all these things because I'm the business development case. And so I'll look for our group to support me, but not confuse the working group's message of get ISO pathway for the application for payment. Don't confuse with too many other things. Flooding the zone is not a solution. But I'm going to flood the zone with solutions because that's what I do. And so I think if the leadership, David and Min, you can work with Jay on getting a path to ISO that you're comfortable with the application for payment, that we can invite everybody to June 30th and answer their questions and talk about, how the GLA report, solidifies our message. So was what I wanted to say today. And everybody got my emails. Does anybody want to say anything, feed anything before we sign off? And then I'll follow up with an email following this call with what I did with Senator Warner. And my ask of everybody is if anybody has any names they'd like to add to the invite list, to let me know so we can add them. And then anybody that has any thoughts on the press release, I'd rather have your quotes than the ones I gave you.
Yeah, Dixon, that's very good. Just very quick on June 30th, because that's what you want focus as our next event. If you can scroll over there, do we have a name that you have in mind from Texas and from Miami who's going to talk?
I'm going to reach out to them. I wanted to have this call first to make sure everybody was okay with the game plan. Steve, who you met, was very interested. Carson, you met him as well.
Yep.
And Carson, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Any